Welcome, everybody, to Talking Ball Postgame Live with Pat Leonard. I am here at Ford Field in Detroit for another ridiculous loss by the Giants, an entertaining one. Jameis Winston experience is everything we hoped it would be and more. Unbelievable play, that bullseye play from Gunnar Olszewski to Jameis Winston. I'll never forget watching that live as long as I live, especially the Heisman stiff arm on Derek Barnes, the spin move, bouncing into the end zone for the finger roll. I mean, the fact that the Giants didn't win this game is so devastating and so crushing, because moments like that are what make football fun again for a team that is constantly losing. And the Giants today, this loss hurt them as much as any loss could, because they did so much right. They did so much well in this game in order to put themselves in the position to beat one of the better teams in the NFL on the road. They didn't have a road win all season. They'd lost 5 in a row. They had just gone through a week of preparing for Jackson Dart to be the starter, only to be told on Friday that he couldn't clear the concussion protocol. So Jameis Winston, again, it is. They had felt like they'd put some good football on the field against the Green Bay Packers last week, and they believed that they could build on it. And so Mike Kafka dipped into his bag of tricks, and you saw the flea flicker to Wan'Dale Robinson. You saw bullseye, the play that it's called, Gunnar Olszewski to Jameis Winston for that touchdown. Another great play, Jameis escaping a sack and hitting Theo Johnson down the field. I was most impressed by Theo Johnson today in any game I've seen him play. Really impressed by the catches that he made, the degree of difficulty. And I just thought it was a very poignant moment to watch at the end of the game here on the field. I don't know if they showed it on the television broadcast for Fox, but when they lost, when Jameis Winston got sacked and they lost, Theo Johnson took his helmet off and threw it about 20 yards downfield into one of the end zones, got down on his knees and was pounding his fist down on the turf, just absolutely crushed, devastated. And I felt like this was an especially cruel defeat for them. And you could see it. The offensive line barely moved. They were all kind of just standing together, huddling as both teams emptied off the sidelines to shake hands. You would think, based on how many bad losses, 5 losses this season when they led games by 10 points or more, 0-7 now on the road, 2-10 on the season, you would think that a team like that would become numb to those results and that it wouldn't hurt as much. But they felt the pain acutely here because of how fun most of this game was, because their offense really couldn't be stopped. 517 yards of offense, the most by a Giants offense since 2019, when Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones led that wild victory at Washington. I think they might have been the Washington football team back then. And so it's been a long time since the Giants put this many yards on the field. And really, the way that they did it, I thought, mattered too. Think about how many players they're missing, right? Scadaboo is out. Dart is out. Neighbors is out. We'll get to Neighbors in a minute. Kayvon Thibodeau out. Paulson Adebo out. A lot of guys playing on this field today here in the Dome in Detroit that weren't on the team several weeks ago, didn't belong on this roster at all, haven't found a place on an active roster in other places in the NFL. Just a lot of different reasons why this Giants team shouldn't even be in a game like this, let alone putting the Lions on their heels all afternoon. Going into the fourth quarter of this game, the crowd here was dead silent. They were pumping music and bass into the speakers here at Ford Field, and no one was reacting. No one was moving. No one was jumping. No one was cheering. And it was really that lopsided. The home crowd, you could tell, thought that it wasn't going to go the Detroit Lions way. And even the moment when Jake Bates hit that field goal live, the crowd thought it was going wide right. and it actually did start out to the right and kind of curved back to the left inside the uprights. It's a season where, as bad as it's been and as much as the Giants are crushed by all of these, you think about Dallas, New Orleans, Denver, all of these losses that they've had, Chicago, and of course the last one, Chicago, cost Brian Daboll his job and Jackson Dart his health. This one still felt like the worst of all of them. Of course, I think when we look back on this season, the Denver Broncos one is the one that you'll say is the worst. But I'm just telling you, the reaction from the players after this one, they felt they had a good game plan, and they really did. Like their offensive line pass block today, as well as I've seen them pass block in a long time. They had a great plan for the Lions pass rush for Aiden Hutchinson. Jermaine Illuminor did do a good job on that side, but the key part of the entire pass block was the fact that all five plus the tight ends were involved in solving this. So the way that they played Hutchinson specifically and the Lions in general, they were having Greg Van Roten, the right guard, either peel off of a double team or his man inside, pass it off to Schmitz, the center, and then go back out and give a chip or help to Hutchinson later into the rush as Illuminor was handling him. And then other plays, they would send a tight end off from Hutchinson's left, so the right side of the Giants formation, to chip Hutchinson that way. Plus, they would screen sometimes, run wide receiver screens, things like that. They were keeping him guessing on whether they were going to drop back and he could rush all the way down the field, and when he did rush, where the contact was going to come from. So it was a really, really savvy plan from Kafka and from the Giants, and execution-wise from the Giants offense. Now, I think that the Giants also as a team were much more disciplined in this game than they were under Brian Daboll. And what I mean by that is the way they execute, how clean a lot of it looked. I felt like they were on their details, from route running to the timing of throws to the way that they pass blocked and passed things off and who took care of their responsibilities, right? They even got an interception, Javon Holland with an interception. Of course, this all comes crashing down late in the game, and that includes the players like Holland on defense, because the lack of discipline then shows up late when Holland smacks the ball out of one of the Lions' hands. I think that was Gibbs late, and costs them 5 yards, and ends up allowing Bates to have a 59-yarder instead of a 64-yarder to tie the game late in regulation. And then, of course, the run defense, absolutely brutal. I want to get to explaining to you guys exactly what the locker room felt like, because that, I think, really paints a strong picture of where the team is right now. I also want to get to all of your questions, though. You've been waiting a while, I know. We talked about this last week as well. I have a full-time job with the New York Daily News that I have to take care of first. So once I am done with that, I come on here, plus an overtime game that sent it long. Plus, Kafka took a long time to come out of for his press conference. Jameis Winston took a while to do his press conference. Everything got backed up and backed up and backed up. And for my story for the Daily News today, I rewrote a lot of it rather than just punching in a couple quotes, because I really thought that the most important part of this game was the feeling after it, as in addition to, obviously, how Jameis played and that whole experience. Quick, short headlines here. Kafka said that he still has faith in Shane Bowen as the defensive coordinator, and he said that Jackson Dart, he expects, would still be the starter if and when he gets cleared. I'll start with the Super Chat questions. Reminder, we are sponsored here by MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga, Mushroom Super Drink, and Sal Loretta for Men. I'm not going to dump a ton of ads on you right now because I showed up late, I know, but just please pay attention to my social media over the next several days and weeks as more unboxings and ads, that I post as far as deals go for all of these great products who are supporting this podcast and are bringing Talking Ball with Pat Leonard directly to you. Really grateful for their support, and I'll punch the codes, the discount codes onto the bottom of the screen here. This is, of course, the YouTube channel. PL on NFL is the handle. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is the podcast, and I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, following the Giants around the country and bringing you post-game access that no one else does every week live from the stadium after I come out of the locker room and talk to all the players and the coaches. All right. Without further ado. Oh, yeah, by the way, you guys might remember Estate 98 Coffee. Estate 98, a former sponsor of the podcast, and they have released a new product as well that I will be unboxing for you guys this week, Thanksgiving week. I think you'll love it. Pay attention to my Instagram, to YouTube Shorts, especially for that reveal. All right, Jimbo checks in. So, guys, purchase a Super Chat or Super Sticker. As you know, your comment or question will rise to the top of the queue, and I will start with Jimbo, who says, nice to see Theo show that he has some talent. Yeah, no, he only ended up, I think, with was it 3 catches for 77 yards on 5 targets? It felt like more catches than that, but I guess the reason is because all 3 of his catches were excellent. All hands, tough catches, nice throws by Jameis too, but placing it in a position in an area where only a big, strong-handed, confident, sure receiver can go get it, and that's what Theo Johnson did. So you guys know, I'll sit here and tell you guys I don't think certain draft picks are good enough. They haven't impressed me. They haven't done enough. I'll say whatever is on my mind and whatever I think I'm seeing and hearing. And I'm telling you that I'm watching this game, and I was calling out, throw the ball to the tight end, throw the ball to the tight end. I thought Theo Johnson was excellent today. Obviously, Wan'Dale Robinson was the star of the show on as a wide receiver, 9 catches for 156 yards and a touchdown, career high for Wan'Dale Robinson in yards. And they were really picking on Amik Robertson for the Detroit Lions early, although Detroit did make some adjustments late to break up some passes that had been working early for Kafka and Jameis and the offense. But yeah, no, Theo, I'm really excited to see that, because we've talked about players like him, Nubin, Drew Phillips, young players who you need to see better ball from, more consistent. Of course, Theo has had some drops. And so I thought that was one of the silver linings to this game. Patrick Evans, what's up, Patrick, says Bowen and Shane and Joe Schoen need to go. I've been watching the Giants for 40 years and have never seen the team so terrible. Yeah, and that's the thing is, and I wrote this for the Daily News, and I know I talk about this a lot with Joe Schoen, but the fact of the matter is, this general manager's personnel is a large reason why this team is where it is. The defense and how they're playing is not just coaching, right? It's also what players you're putting on that defense, right? You're investing money in a Javon Holland. You're investing money in a Paulson Adebo, Bobby Okereke. Dexter Lawrence gets paid. Darius Alexander with 2 sacks today. That's a positive. But Brian Burns, like, you look around the defense, even if some of these guys have some stats and are showing better than others, these are all the players. Abdul Carter. Where is Abdul Carter? These are the players who are on the field for these breakdowns. Interior defensive line. Just like the offensive line, Joe Schoen really doesn't know how to evaluate it very well. DJ Davidson, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Roy Robertson-Harris, alongside Dexter Lawrence, Darius Alexander. These runs that they are giving up to Jahmyr Gibbs in this game, the killers, the backbreakers, the ones that, the explosives, as you call it. Like Dexter said something like, the explosives are what killed us in this game. If you eliminate the explosives, it would have been a different game. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. You guys can't eliminate the explosives. That's the point, right? That's the problem. Jahmyr Gibbs had 15 carries for 219 yards on the ground. So that's 14.6 per carry, 2 touchdowns. Plus, he had 11 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown as well. He had a what did he have? A 49-yard run to set up a 3-yard touchdown pass in the first half in the second quarter. He had a 49-yard touchdown run early in the fourth quarter, and then he had a 69-yard touchdown run in overtime. And I'll give you guys this quote from Javon Holland. So Javon Holland obviously cost the Giants those important yards with the slapping the ball out of Gibbs's hand. That was not smart. I talked to him about that as well. We'll talk about that in a second. But I asked Holland this quote because if it annoys me that people always talk about the Giants secondary when it comes to run defense. We all know that Andre Patterson is one who does that a lot. The D-line coach is always pointing fingers at the edges and the secondary and not on his own defensive line. But the fact of the matter is, Holland, just like many other Giants defenders, not good enough today and looks especially bad as Gibbs is flying by them in the second level. But I do think it's important context to say Gibbs is at top speed on the second level. He is the fastest running back in the league probably, and he's getting to the second level at top speed. So I asked Holland, as somebody who's standing back there at safety, watching these plays develop, and you can see it, why is he getting to the second level at top speed so often in the game? He said he's getting a handoff and he's running straight and he's not being touched. And then he gets to the second level and he's got a full head of steam. Because if we hit him at the first level, he's not going to be untouched. So if he's untouched, that means he's not being hit at the first levels. He's just running straight. So that is a Giants defender saying flat out, he's not being touched, and that's why he's getting to us at that top speed. Now, he actually looked at me. He said, "Is that what you wanted me to say?" And I said, "I don't want you to say anything. I'm asking you what you're seeing and why it's happening." But what his answer did was confirmed my opinion of what's going on in these plays. They're going right up the gut. Whatever is happening with the run fits, with the run defense, with how the D-line is being coached, it's not good enough. Jahmyr Gibbs is an excellent player. Nobody disputes that. But this is like an historic rushing performance by Jahmyr Gibbs in this game and offensive performance. And a lot of it is due to 3 big runs right up the middle of the defense. But to your point, Patrick, I guess I veered off course there a little bit. You started by talking about Bowen and Joe Schoen. Yeah, Shane Bowen's in over his head, obviously. And, that's been obvious now for a while. And the mismanagement of the team from top to bottom, it's always difficult for me to point a finger just at a defensive coordinator when a team is mismanaged by a head coach like Dable, when a team has poor personnel or not good enough personnel in key spots due to the general manager. I always want to make sure that those realities are understood first, but there's no defending anything regarding this coordinator in this defense. I mean, what are we watching right now? Put it this way, Kelvin Shepard's Lions defense was atrocious today, and somehow the Giants still come out looking worse. Very Gooster says, I know they're practice squad guys, but I can't believe how many of these depth DBs make business decisions on the field, scared to touch Gibbs. But Very Gooster, it's interesting that you posted that as I was saying that. I really do think you have to understand when the fastest running back in the league crosses the line of scrimmage untouched, your defensive backs are going to struggle to get that runner down. Now, there was a run in the first half where Corey Black looked like he kind of watched it go by him and down. That was Amon-Ra. That was Amon-Ra's touchdown. So there are isolated plays here and there where you see them like you're talking about and you say, okay, we can't be having that. But I do think that you have to, if you're going to say, hey, business decisions, DBs, not good enough, you really need to zero in on the first problem there. The first problem is they are not coaching their players up front in a way that puts them in a position to make consistent run stops and to make consistent plays. And two players who are supposed to be big-time players did not show up in this game. Dexter Lawrence, 1 tackle. That's his stat line, 1 tackle. Abdul Carter, 4 tackles, 3 tackles, 1 assisted. Not much of an impact in the game. A couple offsides. Dexter Lawrence got injured during this game. He had what they called a flare-up. So what happened was he got hurt, and they won't reveal what it is, but they said he got nicked up. And so let's actually look at his exact snaps. NFL Next Gen stats. So Dexter Lawrence played 33 snaps, which is only 50% of the defensive workload. That did include, however, he played, he was in for that final Lions drive before the field goal. So he was in at the end there, but he got nicked up during this game, they said, and that impacted how much they played him strategically when they put him in the game. And then Kafka said whatever he got nicked up with flared up in the fourth. And so that was the reason they said he was not on the field for Gibbs's game-winning touchdown in overtime. And that, of course, resulted in, instead of Dexter Lawrence being on the field, it was DJ Davidson and Roy Robertson Harris, with Abdul Carter and Brian Burns on the edges. And really, if you watch the play, they look like they were running some sort of, it's really hard to understand. Roy Robertson Harris gets blown off the line of scrimmage with a double team, and Brian Burns kind of crosses the face of the entire line of scrimmage. Holland is down low, and so Dane Belton is the only one back. So they ended up having kind of like a 5-man on the line of scrimmage with Drew Phillips on the inside, Swayze Bozeman, Bobby Okereke. The point of the whole play is that whatever the heck the Giants were doing on that play, from the call to the execution, they completely vacate the middle of the field. NY2 says, did we all get the Abdul Carter pick wrong? Yeah, that's a good question, NY2. I think this is a good example of, with young players, sometimes you draft a player and you automatically declare it a hit because, hey, Abdul Carter is getting pressures on the quarterback. The sacks are going to come, right? That's what you think early on. Sometimes rookies flash and have great starts to their NFL career, and you say it's definitely a hit. Or flip side, sometimes guys really struggle early, and you say, oh, he's a bust, before giving him 2 to 3 years to really figure out what he is and what he isn't. And there's always a chance that it goes the other way as the player gets more experience. So what we're seeing with Abdul Carter right now is a player who early on in the season, with a lot of leeway and grace for the type of player he is, the type of player he's supposed to be, the motor that he has, his explosiveness, the kind of training camp that he had, even when the numbers weren't coming early, it looked like, he'll figure it out. He'll get there. But this past week, with the news coming out that he was benched for that series against Green Bay because he slept through a walkthrough, and the fact that leaked out, right? The fact that players didn't go to wake him up for that walkthrough. Like, this was a wake-up call. This is clear that people don't have a high opinion of his work ethic. It was even reported by Dan Duggan, who broke the story, that it's become a trend with him. So, issues like this, being late, things like that. You would love to see a difference in production and in execution coming off of that kind of week. Not good enough, though. Now, as I just said, players who are rookies, you continue to watch them over the course of the next few years and hope that they develop. You look at the roster, you look at what you surround them with as far as coaching and leadership goes around them. But listen, Abdul Carter, even though he's a young player, it's not on Brian Burns or Kayvon Thibodeau to hold his hand, right? It's definitely on the defensive coordinator and the position coach. So that's Shane Bowen and Charlie Boland. To, does it mean use him differently? Do you use him differently? Do you show him how to diversify his pass rushing? Do you explain to him that it's not all just about getting upfield on the pass rush, but you need to set the edge, stop the run, do the simple things better first, right? That's really where they need to be. So did they get the pick wrong? No, I'm not going to say they got the Abdul Carter pick wrong, but NY2, I think it's extremely fair of you to ask the question, hey, have we all assumed wrong here that this pick was an obvious hit? And should we be evaluating this more objectively and keeping an eye on this, is what you're saying. And I totally agree with that, because listen, any number 3 overall pick with this little production should be critiqued and put on the carpet and had a spotlight shined on them. Like, think about if you drafted, any player, you draft number 3 at all, 3 overall, and let's say you start them or you give them significant snaps and they disappoint. That's a big headline. And I think this is another example too, NY2, and I'm not just saying this, like, this is true. I think that the Giants, the way that they connect with members of the national media, that results in the absence of headlines calling out what's going on with a player like Abdul Carter. Like, they get more grace from people on some of these shows and national networks for disappointments or issues like this. Boomer Sooner with an interesting point that goes along with that last question a little bit. Player development is the biggest problem that I see. Yeah, Boomer Sooner, I understand what you mean. And I think when you're talking about player development, you're referencing players taking the next step as far as their usage, as far as correcting mistakes, not repeating the same mistakes, being put in the right positions to succeed, improving their bodies to the point where they can be counted on more. There's a lot of different ways. Every player develops differently. But I hear you, Boomer Sooner. I hear you. The one thing I will push back on there, though, is that some of these players who are failing, player development sometimes implies that it's all the coaches and the roster's fine. I don't agree with that. But I do see your point about a lack of player development because you're not seeing enough players who they need to take another step, take that step. Boomer Sooner also says, I really doubt the next head coach will be a first-timer at this point. We very clearly lack any sense of direction on the sideline. Give me Marcus Freeman. Well, Boomer Sooner, did you guys see the report from Florio on Pro Football Talk? I don't know where he said this. I have to go and find it. But he reported, I saw the JPA football account posted that Florio reported that the Giants could end up trading for a head coach even this year to fix their issue, their leadership problem. Now, what coach would that be? Would that be Tomlin? I don't know. But I thought that was an interesting thing for Florio to add, wondering what you guys think of it. And let me know, which coaches do you think they would be targeting if they were to trade for a coach? I mean, you could say McVay, but I mean, why would the Rams do that? Null Void says, I understand people want to blame Dex because he was paid and Carter being drafted 3rd overall, but Bobby Okereke has been awful as well. Taking bad angles was also paid, and with Carter, Bowen is awful. Yeah, no, I definitely threw that into the mix. I hope talking about, Joe Schoen signings and guys who aren't working out, aren't playing well enough. How do you disagree with that? This is, again, goes back to the point that needs to be reemphasized. These breakdowns that happen through the middle of the defense, it is every level of the defense, right? So it's the D line, no contact, the linebackers, no contact, and then right past the safeties or the corners or whoever, as you're going full speed, and you're Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the fastest backs in the league. And Bobby Okereke is right there in the middle, not able to make those plays either, for sure. And the Giants were rotating in essentially special teams linebackers to fill next to Bobby Okereke as well. Zaire Barnes and Swayze Bozeman both playing a fair amount, with Demetrius Flanagan-Foles injured and out. By the way, just throwing this in there, I have no idea how Drew Phillips ended up coming back to this game. I asked Kafka how he was doing, and he said he came back in. I didn't even notice that he came back, but he was lying like motionless on the field for a little bit there. So I don't know what happened there. Definitely going to follow up on that. But Drew was in the locker room, I guess. Okay. With Carter not playing well, we have to give Thibodeau money, says NY2. Interesting. Yeah, maybe Thibodeau's value going up with him sitting and letting Carter sink or swim. But he's not just sitting, obviously. He's hurt. Shoulder injury. All right. Thank you for all the super chats, guys. Really appreciate you here on Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard from Ford Field in Detroit. All right, I'm going to jump through the queue. Anybody who wants their comment or question answered first, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker, but otherwise I'm going to go in the queue. I'll skip over things that are repeats. Shedeur got his first win. That's right. Let's see. Bo says our fan base is delusional as the Cowboys. At least the Jets understand they are in the dump. One thing I did tweet before the games today is that I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to make the playoffs, and they just came back and stunned the Philadelphia Eagles in Dallas. Not shocked by that, though. Their defense is much better with Overshawn and Quinnen Williams, and they're a good team. They have a monster offense, and wouldn't want to play them. Whoa, Patrick Evans. Patrick checks in with a $50 super chat. Patrick, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do. That means a lot to me, and your guys' support means a lot to me, including your patience, as I said, jumping in here post-game. But I love doing these. I know I've tailed off on the ones during the week. I have to get back to that. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little gassed right now. Could use some days off. Could use a breather, kind of a reset. But there's no time for it, right? Late bye week. So the season's getting late early. And of course, 2-10, right? Not a lot of positives to hang your hat on. Not enough exciting games like this. Like, listen, when you lose games, that's one thing. But when you lose boring games or you're a horrible team, that's another. Like today was a game where it was a horrific loss, but it was exciting. It was fun, right? A lot of it was fun to watch. Like these are the games you do the job for, All right, so let's get to your question, Patrick. Sorry, made me reflect a little bit there with your amazing support. All right, so Patrick says, Pat, when you talk about this, it starts from the top of the organization, John Mara making bad coaching decisions. I think your next article should be the last 5 coaches that were hired. Have you noticed how none of those coaches have been hired again. Yeah, Patrick, I understand what you're saying there. I do think that part of that also is the Giants with a lot of those situations, or some of those situations, the Giants always find a way to throw dirt on those guys on their way out the door. And like Ben McAdoo, I know he lost the locker room there, but the way that he was fired over the Eli benching and how that was handled, even though he'd gone to the playoffs the previous year, was only in the second season. Like they killed his career. And Joe Judge, a guy who will be a head coach again, either in Division I college or NFL, I do think is a good head coach. Just has, had a blind spot, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball at the time running the Giants, but was also paired with a horrendous general manager and had his legs basically taken out from under him. But I think Judge was a good coach. I think that if they had given him one more year and he had that 2022 schedule, I think he'd still be the head coach here. But not only does he get fired, but then the Giants fire him and they claim that Dave Gettleman is retiring, and they roll out the red carpet for him at his last game, and they point the finger and they basically pin all of Dave's failures on Judge, in addition to the couple things that Judge did that were regrettable. And so from my vantage point, Patrick, I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater with all of those coaches. Pat Shurmur, a guy who, as much as he was not head coach material and is not head coach material, he was a very good offensive coach and got points out of their offense and out of Daniel Jones, right? And of course was scapegoated when Gettleman was allowed to stay. And so I do think also, and Daboll's a little different to me. Daboll is somebody I thought that they extended more grace to than he deserved and had earned. And I thought that, I think he made his bed. I think they let him stay long enough so that he made his bed, and now he's gonna have to lay in it or lie in it. But Patrick, I do also see your point, which is that from the top, John Mara, the Giants organization, they need to identify what leadership looks like. They need to identify what they want to be, and they need to properly adjudge in these interviews and in their assessments of these candidates who is the right person to not only lead your football team and your organization and represent your football team, but also to restore what the Giants are supposed to be and what they're supposed to stand for. Now, the closest person that came to that, doing that, was Judge. And they charged him with bringing more discipline and structure back to the building. He understood what Giants football was supposed to look like. He had more success in division than any of the other guys were talking about, actually won some games against their rivals. And yet it was just not allowed to be completed. Marrying him to that general manager and making him work with him cut his legs out from under him. And Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator didn't help either. But Patrick, you're getting me going on a subject that's very important here, which is this. First of all, let's start here. And I wrote this for the Daily News Sunday print edition. And I'm going to tell this to you guys now, too. Some of you may have read it. Some of you may have not. But when I look at this situation here with the Giants and John Mara, I say to myself, John Mara, in this case, because you're right. He's the one running the organization. He's been the one at the top making these decisions, right? And there's accountability, blame, credit, Super Bowls, right? All of that. It all goes up to the top. John Mara, Steve Tisch, etc. But what I'm grateful for with John Mara right now is that John Mara is the one who lost patience and said enough is enough with what we're watching right now, and said, fire Daboll, get him out of here. I don't care that it's in the middle of the season. I don't care it's earlier than I fire coaches. I've had enough. Enough is enough. Get him out. John Mara put his foot down on that. He's the one who drove that decision. He's the heartbeat of the organization. And he's the one who could have easily said, I think I know what I'm going to do, but let's get to the bye week. Let's get to the end of the year. And he said, no. Do it now. Get him out of here. Okay. In fact, Nikki Gist, the reporter on social media, on Twitter, her report originally, remember she reported that Mara, after the Broncos collapse, wanted to fire Dable and that he was talked off the ledge. At the time, I did not have sources confirming or denying that. I didn't know. So I didn't confirm it. I said, that's interesting. I'll look into it. Well, I'm here to tell you that is true. It is true that John Mara wanted to fire Brian Dable after the Broncos game and that he was talked off the ledge, and then he waited 3 more games and then they did it. And now listen, John is in a health battle that is much more significant and important than any football game or any of the things we're talking about right now. So that is what's most important. As I say every show now when we talk about John, we're praying for you. We're thinking of you. We want you to get back right, get back healthy, keep fighting. And that's an important thing to point out here in context of all of this. But what I see there is that John understands what needs to be done. As much as you're pointing out the shortcomings in their identification of leadership, etc., he understands what needs to be done. And that gives me optimism that he is going to finish the job, or knows that he needs to finish the job, and that would mean firing the general manager. Now, I'm not saying he's going to fire the general manager. As far as I understand, they haven't made that decision yet. That's going to be an end of season conversation, along with the coaching search and along with what the Giants want to be and who they bring in. But I'm optimistic that John showed us with his impatience after the Denver game and with his firing of Dable so early. I am very confident that he understands, if anybody understands here, that this needs to look different, and they need to be represented in a better way. Like, Schoen is not the right person to lead them from an optics and standpoint. Like, him being the figurehead and the person who represents them, the way that he conducts himself, the way that they try to pull the puppet strings on the national media and create narratives and I'd say, push propaganda. I just think that they're better than this. And I think John knows that. And I promise you, I think, as much as I hope I'm conveying some important points to you guys here, or clear points to you here, I'd ask you to read my column on the Daily News about this. It's a little bit more articulate, probably, than I just explained it. But that's something I really feel strongly about, is that John at least he's on the right track here. And I like that he got impatient with the coach, because I think he knows what the Giants are supposed to look like and what the standard is that they have to get back to. Now, your point also about the fact that they've made bad hires and they need to look into what's the common thread. Patrick, you're absolutely right. I think that's a really good point, looking into maybe why they made those hirings and how to get away from those mistakes again, right? Because that involves, who were you listening to when you made those hires? What qualities in those coaches did you prioritize, but there were others maybe that you ignored or didn't value as enough, and now in hindsight, it's clear you should have elevated above on your rubric. Patrick, can't thank you enough. All right. Boomer Sooner says, do these 1-score losses give Schoen a bump? I already know he will bring up how close they are in his next presser. Right. Oh, yeah. The talking points are all loaded, locked and loaded, I'm sure. Boomer Sooner, I think the offense obviously looks better with Kafka calling the plays and running the team than with when Dable was here. So that's a plus. I think the defense, how bad the defense is, and the rosters where the roster is from a salary cap standpoint, how much work needs to be done to get it to the next level, I don't think are positives at all for Schoen. Also, Boomer, I think, call me crazy, but when you're in year one, maybe year two, the one score games argument is something that I would listen to. But when you're in year four, I don't follow how that would be a conversation. I think that this is my opinion. I'm saying if an organization thinks that way in year four of a general manager who constantly loses, then I think that would be another example of the organization getting in its own way and having no idea how to properly evaluate itself and its leadership. This is just way below the standard of the organization to parse those types of comments, because Boomer Sooner, you look around the league. So a lot of teams, we have all these ideas of which teams are good and which teams are not, right? So in this week, the Texans beat the Bills 23-19. The Jets lost to the Ravens, but they only lost by 13 points, 23-10. The Bears, who seem like a clearly better team than a Steelers team without Aaron Rodgers, only won by 3. The Patriots, who are light years better than the Bengals this season, only beat them by 6. The Chiefs, 3 points over the Colts. How about this? The Seattle Seahawks, 30. The Tennessee Titans, 24. Shedeur Sanders gets his first win. Dallas, 3-point win over Philly. My point in bringing all of this up is this is a league where close games happen all the time, and your record is usually based on whether you win or lose close games. And not every game, but like the difference between going 6-11 and 8-9 could just be 2 games you lost in the final play. But that's the NFL, and 6-11 is a lot different from 8-9. And it's not about, well, we could have easily been 8-9 if we made these couple plays. Like that would be a losing mentality, I guess is the best way I could put it. Richard says, John Schmelk said the other day that we should trade away our first round pick to get more draft capital in the other rounds. Do you agree? It seems like we need help in every position group except quarterback. Well, especially if they have the first overall pick. It'll be interesting to see, like, will there be a quarterback or a player who is so obviously the number one that other teams want that the Giants don't need, that they can secure that? I'll say this. I love the idea of making those phone calls, taking those phone calls, and entertaining the idea. I definitely think that the Giants roster is barren enough that they do need to entertain that idea and that suggestion. I also like Jackson Dart a lot. But then the interesting question is, what positions do they need, right? Like if they use their first round pick, is it going to be a receiver? But when they need corners, they need offensive linemen, they need defensive tackles, right? Like there's so many other things that they need. Boomer says, Schoen seems like a smug dude. Who would want to do business with him, especially when the team he represents are historically bad right now? I'd say that's, not to make it personal, but I'd say that's fair. All right, let's see. All right, who else do we have in the chat? Let's see. Dr. Garrett, what's up? He says all the resources spent on this defense and they can never make one play when it counts. It's like watching the same crap movie over and over with no alternative ending. Well said. Joseph says, how long until we change the defensive coordinator? Honestly, we looked good, played hard, seemed like winners, and the defense continues to choke. Yeah, I was honestly wondering, watching Pat Fitzgerald at Giants practice, if there was a chance that Kafka would replace Bowen with Fitzgerald down the stretch or something like that. the former Northwestern coach. But like I said, I asked Kafka after the game today. He said he had faith in Bowen. Bombo says, I would like to see Kafka paired with another defensive coordinator. I'd love to have Wink Martindale again. I'm worried Kafka goes to another team and is a good head coach and we end up with Kingsbury. Yeah, Kingsbury's that's a little bit scary. He's a good offensive coordinator. I don't know about head coach. Yeah, Martindale would be great. I mean, I can promise you this. Abdul Carter would not be viewed as a bust if Wink Martindale was the Giants' defensive not bust, but I'm saying somebody earlier asked, like I think it was NY2 asked, hey, was the Carter pick great? Or should we rethink whether the Carter pick was an obvious hit? I can promise you if Martindale was the defensive coordinator, right now people would be raving about Abdul Carter's rookie year. Just like we all thought Deonte Banks after his rookie season under Martindale was looking like an obvious number 2 starting corner in the NFL, and now he looks like he can't play in the NFL. Right? This is just what happens with the Giants and players. It's terrible. And let me actually tell you guys and by the way, we have about I'd say 10 more minutes or so. So if you have any more questions, purchase those super chats, super stickers, let them roll in. But I want to convey to you guys what I heard in the locker room today. So Theo Johnson really had a really tough time. I said, what was different about how much this one hurt? He said, I want to win. I care a lot. I work really hard. I give a lot to this game and this team. So it's frustrating when you don't get the results you want and you work for it. We played well enough to win and we didn't win. That hurts. Gunnar Olszewski, who threw the touchdown pass to Jameis Winston on bullseye that play, I asked him if essentially if the vibes are sky high and the offense feels like it can't be stopped when they're executing trick plays like that. And this was, I thought, a really good way of describing the Giants' day. He said, it sure is, meaning the vibes are sure high. Then they sink all the way back to the bottom when we get to the locker room. It feels like we're winning on the sideline, and we are winning, and then we don't. He actually added that the vibes are high on the offensive side of the ball. Jameis Winston said, honestly, I think our issue is more of a spiritual thing than X's and O's. We have to dig deep and continue to exhibit unwavering faith and not get into an energy of denial or doubt. He said, I love Coach Kafka's message, leave no doubt. And today we left some doubt out there. We were on the 3-yard line with a chance to put the freaking nail in the coffin, and I missed Theo Johnson on the quick flat. That is the details. That is the execution that is required to win tough NFL games. I have the full Jameis Winston press conference up on the channel, YouTube, PL on NFL. Go watch that video. It's 5.5 minutes. He had some classic Jameis moments, especially where he says about the stiff arm on Derek Barnes. He says, Russell Wilson sent me a picture of doing the Heisman in like a little GIF. I think it's called a GIF. And I did the Heisman, and we got in the end zone. We just didn't win. We got to win. Mike Kafka said that he stands by the decision to go for the fourth and goal instead of kicking the field goal to go up 6. He said we wanted to be aggressive. We were in a good flow, wanted to go up 2 scores. Jameis Winston said, I am with it. We are desperate for a win. And I do think there's something to that of the Giants feeling like, listen, we got nothing to lose. We need this. Let's finish it. But here's another thing you guys got to remember. And not that you guys don't know, but I'm saying people in general. Mike Kafka is not going to say this, but he made that decision because even up 6 after a field goal, they don't trust the defense. They don't. They don't trust the defense. That's it. That's the bottom line. They are disgusting defensively. And remember, why do they stink defensively? Because Brian Daboll, with Joe Schoen allowing it, ran a hit job on the Wilkins brothers, and Wink Martindale resigned out of loyalty to them and was tired of all the BS and knew that this operation was going nowhere with the people running it in place. And what does it look like now? Right? What does it look like now? But my point bringing that up is defensively, think about the personnel they had on the field during that run in 2022 when they started, what was it, 6-1, 7-2, and they were running the ball and the defense was playing really well. You compare on paper the personnel of that defense to this defense, it is ludicrous to think of the results. All right, let's see. And by that I mean ludicrous to think of the results Martindale was able to get versus the ones Bowen cannot get now. All right, let's see what questions we have left. All right, we got 2 more super chats here. We got Formula Red with a $10 super chat says Shane Bowen is literally a liability at this point. The staff has to know this. On another note, I think Shane and Gettleman are the same GM, only Shane has slightly better free agencies. Yeah, no, the fact that Joe Shane is even in the same sentence as Dave Gettleman should tell you all you need to know about the job that he has done. Like when Dave Gettleman was fired here, I said to myself, there goes the worst general manager I've ever seen in the NFL. And Shane's team is challenging that. I mean, think about this. Last year, the Giants were 1 game away from having their first winless home season since the 1970s. This season, they're 0-7 right now. If they lose to the Patriots, it'll be 0-8 on the road, and they will be in jeopardy of going 0-9 winless on the road for this entire season if they lose to Vegas after Christmas. On top of that, they set a franchise record with 10 straight losses on their schedule last year. And this year, they set a record for 11 consecutive road losses. And now it's 12. This is a franchise record. 12 straight road losses. New franchise record. In my lifetime, will another Giants team beat that? Hard to imagine. All right. And Stevie Key says, Mara, I think, may deserve the same scrutiny as Chris Mara. Isn't he in charge of player personnel? Would development and evaluation fall under him? He's a part of that too. So is Tim McDonald. They're all a part of it. Chris Mara has been the ranking official on road trips as John Mara has been fighting and battling cancer. And Chris Mara is, at the moment, he and the Tisch family. By the way, I saw Steve Tisch today. Walking out of the stadium. It's good to see him. But yes, no, the Chris Mara, John Mara, Tim McDonald, Steve Tisch, Jonathan Tisch. Now you have Julia Koch in the mix as a minority owner. These owners are all a part of and the extended Mara family. When they get out of this season and they sit around a table or sit in a room or get on a conference call or however they handle it, these are the principals who all share some accountability and responsibility for how this is going to look and what they're going to take, what next steps they are going to take, and whether they are going to continue to enable Joe Shane to continue running these drafts and these free agencies and managing this roster. They have to understand that their expectations for themselves and their standard for themselves has to be higher. They need to have a higher opinion of what they're supposed to be, what they need to be. They need to give the players more than what they're giving them right now, because the looks on their faces today, Theo Johnson slamming his fist on the green turf here at Ford Field, Darius Slayton down on one knee, the offensive lineman crushed, absolutely crushed. Couldn't believe that they lost this. Devastated. Milan Fan Club says, Pat, what do you think of Jameis starting the rest of the season? I like what I've seen with him and Mike Kafka so far. Milan, I personally would like to see Jameis start at least until after the bye. I see no reason to rush Jackson Dart back. I know some people feel like he should get more gameplay and run and more experience as a young quarterback who's the future of your franchise. But given the severity of the head injury, the fact that he wasn't able to be cleared before this game, how important his health is for their long-term, and also the fact that he's already, I think, put enough football on the field to make you excited about what his future looks like. And I would just be overly cautious. I'm glad they were for this game. I don't know if they're going to be for the New England game. Dart, his post on Instagram seemed to indicate that he intends to be back soon. And he was on the sideline today and walking around normally. So there's a chance he's back soon. But I think, especially after this game, hard to sit down a quarterback after a game like this, isn't it? I mean, very difficult to sit a quarterback after a performance like this. I'm glad you asked that. And let's also, by the way, I don't think I even mentioned this yet. Last but not least, Malik Neighbors after the game on Twitter. Sometimes I think they be making us lose on purpose because it's no way, bro. You throw the ball instead of running it to make them burn 2 timeouts. Then you don't kick the field goal. Then they have to go down and score. Football common sense. Am I missing something? So questioning Kafka, questioning the Giants, questioning the whole, everything that he's watching from afar. Another example of a Joe Schoen draft pick where even if he hits on some talent, is the character part of that a problem? Are there issues there that they're not going to be able to control? Which coach do you bring in? Think about this. Malik and him mouthing off like this and his habits, Abdul Carter and his habits. There's only a select amount of coaches if the Giants are looking to acquire a coach in a trade out there or to land the next coach. To your guys' point, they have to go with experience if they're going to rein in people with opinions like that. And players, like this is a young team that needs guidance, that needs to be steered in the right direction. Milan Fan Club says, I think with Jackson, shut him down for the season. He has nothing to show us anymore since he's our future. I think it is a risk. Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I don't hate that idea. I know I'm in the minority there, but I don't hate the idea. All right, guys, you're the best. Thank you so much for all of your support, especially to Super Chatters, Jimbo, Patrick, Ferry Gooster, NY2, Boomer Sooner, Null Void, Patrick Evans with the big $50 Super Chat. Appreciate you. Richard Armstrong, Bombo, Formula Red, Stevie Keys, Milan Fan Club, and Boomer Sooner checked in a bunch with Super Chats. Thank you guys so much. Going to try to take a deep breath and maybe bring you some more midweek chats back because I'm seeing the support for this chat, rise. And really, we're at an unprecedented level here on the channel, way over 5,000 subscribers and climbing, and very grateful to all of you for the support. From Detroit, this is Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talking Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, brought to you by MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Salaretta for Men. Stay tuned to all my social media channels for some unboxings and some great product giveaways. And, of course, the discount codes for all of those have been scrolling across the screen. Support our sponsors. Thank you for supporting the chat. Thank you all to the Super Chatters especially. And thank you all for being so patient with me after the game. See you next time.